Hello everyone, welcome back. This week we'll be learning about organ systems so that way we can better understand how drugs affect our body. We're not going to learn about all 12. We're going to learn about 5 in particular, 4 on this lecture, and then for the next lecture we'll be heavily focused on the nervous system. So today we're going over the circulatory system, and you can find this chapter or this section under Concepts of Biology PDF book, and this is the book that I have provided for you. However, this week you will also need the assigned textbook, which is Julian's Drug Primer, so make sure you have access to that as well. But as far as this section, everything that I'm going to talk about, you can also read about on Concepts of Biology, and we're going over the circulatory system, digestive system, excretory system, and respiratory system. So first of all, organ systems are basically an organization of cells. And so cells, when they become specialized, form tissues and work together basically. And those tissues come together to form an organ, for example, like the heart. And then the organ also forms a network with either other organs or other areas in the body, and then become what we call an organ system. And that organ system is very vital to the survival of complex organisms like ourselves. We have 12 organ systems total, but we're only going to learn about a few of them today. And so we'll start off with the circulatory system. The circulatory system is a network of the heart and the veins and arteries, which basically carry blood towards the heart. So veins carry blood towards the heart and arteries carry blood away from the heart. So anytime blood is being carried away from the heart, that's because it is filled with oxygen. And so it is delivering it to the cells in the body. And once that oxygen is dropped off and carbon dioxide is picked up, then it is returned by the veins to the heart. And the circulatory system not only delivers blood, but it's also part of the immune system, and it also delivers nutrients to all of our cells. And so it is highly organized. Even within the heart, the chambers are separated so that only one side, the left side, receives oxygen, and the right side is the one that is deoxygenated, so that way that the blood can go to the lungs and then become oxygenated before it is dispersed to the rest of the body. And so the circulatory system, again, is a network of the heart and veins and arteries that basically carry, or blood is pumped to all of the cells to carry oxygen, nutrients, and assist in fighting infections, and to get rid of waste products such as carbon dioxide. The veins in our body is a site for drug injection. And so it happens to be that the quickest route of delivery for a drug is to our circulatory system, because the drug, once it enters the bloodstream, will be quickly delivered to all of the cells and to our brain as well. And so this tends to be a popular site of entry for certain types of drugs. And in this case, heroin or any other type of drugs that are basically crushed up, melted, and then injected. And so this is, again, the quickest route for drugs to enter our body, but also the most lethal because the concentration is so high. And if the body cannot tolerate that type of concentration, then it can go into shock and even death. All right, moving on to the digestive system. This is another organ system of our body, which contains the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and also other accessory organs like the liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. And so here's the esophagus, the stomach, the small and large intestines are over here, and then even the exit route, which is the anus, and that is how waste basically escapes our body, and also impurities and toxins. The liver is one that we're going to focus on because this is a site in which all of the nutrients and everything that passes through the digestive system must go to the liver before it enters the bloodstream. So the digestive system, the main function is to digest food, and basically this is converting food particles into smaller particles that can be more readily digested by our cells. And it's also involved in absorption, which is food particles entering our body and into our bloodstream to be delivered to the cells. So digestion is a process of breaking down that food, where absorption is a process of delivering that food to the rest of our cells. The stomach is the site of many enzymes. Enzymes are needed here to break down food particles. Well, first of all, the enzymes in the stomach function best at this acidity level, at this pH, and also it just makes it easier to break down big food particles like meat. And some drugs are ingested, and because they are ingested, they don't necessarily quickly enter our bloodstream. First, they have to overcome many barriers, and one of that is the acidity levels of the stomach. And so, as drugs enter our body, the acidity itself in the stomach can denature or can um, inactivate some of that drug before it even enters our intestine systems and before it enters into our bloodstream to the rest of the cells. And so when a drug is ingested, only half of it ends up being delivered to the rest of the body. So again, our digestive system is a site for food particles to be turned into nutrient particles, and then those nutrient particles enter our bloodstream and basically deliver food to our cells. And anything that is not a nutrient in the intestines, whatever is not broken down, is basically excreted as a waste molecule. And so that means that that drugs that do not end up entering into our bloodstream also can be excreted through this route. The liver is part of our digestive system. It lays above the stomach, and its job is to detoxify the blood and also to filter anything that's coming from our intestines before it enters into the blood. And so the liver's main job, again, is to filter the blood to remove toxins that are not needed. And then these toxins are basically sent to the kidneys to be excreted. And so the liver then becomes a site of metabolism to break down drugs as well. And that's why when you ingest or and it could be just like a over the counter drug too. It can be Tylenol, whatever. But that's why when you ingest a drug, it doesn't have a long effect. Well, of course, it depends on what type of drug it is and how it's metabolized. But for example, like Tylenol will only last 4 hours because the liver basically breaks down the molecules and then it is no longer functional in our system. And so different drugs work differently, and some end up taking a longer time to be broken down than others, and therefore the effects of them last a lot longer. And so the liver has many functions. It's involved in cholesterol synthesis and the storage of glucose, and so these are sugar storages. Should our body be low of sugar, this is one site in which we can quickly gain some, so that way all of our cells can be fed. But in our case, we are going to focus on how the liver acts as a site of detoxification. And as a result, liver damage is something that is common among chronic drug users because it is basically working overtime to constantly break down these drugs. And at some point, even the enzymes that are responsible for breaking down these drugs will stop being produced if the liver is overworked. And so that can result in liver damage, which can then be lethal and can result in death. All right, let's move on to another organ system, which is called the excretory system. You can call it the urinary system as well. And so in this case, it involves the kidneys and the urethers and the bladder. And so the kidneys act as a very efficient filter for ridding the body of toxic waste and returns vitamins, amino acids, glucose, and hormones back into our bloodstream. And so this is like a filtering system. So that way we don't get rid of all of the important nutrients. We can still reserve those and only get rid of waste through our body. And so once the kidneys filter the blood and return what's good and basically eliminate what isn't good for our body, then it is converted into urine and excreted out of our body. And so urine contains water, urea, salts, creatine, byproducts, and waste products removed from the body. And so this is also a site in which toxins and drugs are removed. And so blood is filtered 60 times a day by the kidneys. And what's neat, once again, is that the kidneys have this ability to reabsorb useful materials and only excrete the ones that are no longer needed. And so this is just a close-up of a kidney and all of the blood vessels that are inside of it. And it's a very intricate system in which the blood is filtered through these capillaries called the glomerulus. And so this whole thing right here is glomerulus. And once it does this filtration, then again, only what is not useful for our body is then excreted through the urine. Drug excretion is a process of eliminating a drug from the body, and the majority of drugs are eliminated by the kidneys, broken down by the liver and eliminated by the kidneys. The drugs that do not take these pathways or basically use other pathways as well. So this can, although this is like the major route of elimination, there are other ways in which our body tries to get rid of toxins. And some of those ways are through our lungs, so we can exhale it out, through our sweat, if a female is pregnant, through her milk, tears, skin, hair, or saliva. And so these are considered secondary processes for drug excretion, while the primary is through the kidneys by the urine. And of course, another mechanism happens to be in the digestive system. So if the drugs are not absorbed and delivered to the cells, then they will pass through the large intestines and be excreted as feces. And so the three types of drug excretion pathways that I talked about is the kidneys, first broken down by the liver and then delivered to the kidneys to be excreted by urine, through the large intestines and excreted as feces, or secondary actions such as sweat, tears, skin, hair, and saliva. Which drugs do you think a urine test can detect? If you said any of the following, then you are correct. And since the urinary system, like we said, the excretory and the urinary system are the same thing, by the way, but we said that is the major route of drug excretion, a urinary test is very useful in detecting whether any of these drugs and even other types have been ingested. And so it's good at detecting alcohol, amphetamines, barbiturates, benzodiazepines, cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, and opioids. All right, let's talk about the respiratory system, which involves the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, bronchi. Basically, those are the cells within the lungs, and bronchioles as well. This is where gas exchange occurs between the environment and inside of your body. So this is the site for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And the respiratory system also includes the lungs and the diaphragm, which is a muscle right underneath it, which helps us breathe and intake air and exhale as well. And so a person on average takes about 15 breaths per minute, or 21,600 breaths per day. And of course, it depends on whether you're doing exercise or not, but this is at rest. Inhalation is a process of filling the lungs with oxygen from the atmosphere, which enters into our bloodstream and then travels to our organs and tissues. Whereas exhalation is the basically getting rid of the carbon dioxide, the waste product, from our cells into our bloodstream and then out our lungs. And so it's released back into the atmosphere. And so here we go. Oxygen is inhaled and carbon dioxide is exhaled, excuse me. The respiratory system is a route of entry for certain drugs, for example, like nicotine, marijuana, and others that can be dissolved and smoked, and also the inhalants, for example, like paint thinner. And once these drugs are inhaled, then they go through our bronchioles and our lungs before they enter our bloodstream. So during that process, some of the drug is lost. It's not the same as if you were to inject it into your veins. And so some of it is lost because it is exhaled back into the environment or just processed in the lungs. However, a pretty large quantity can end up entering into the bloodstream if a drug is taken this way. Okay, that was all I had to say about the respiratory system. That it is the site of gas exchange and also another major route for drug entry, which is why we covered these type of organ systems. Now, this right here is just a slide for you to check your knowledge. So in your own words, describe each organ system, what is its function, and how are drugs processed in each of these pathways. You do not need to turn this in. This is just like check your own knowledge. Now I'm going to start on the second part of this presentation, which is the nervous system. And the nervous system has a lot more information. We're going to cover it much more in depth. So I will see you in the next PowerPoint presentation.